Start then. Okay, welcome everybody to my talk. I know it's always difficult when you have two talks in parallel to select the right one. I hope that you will enjoy it. I think it's the second time that I present this talk. Nothing brand new, but I like it because I hope that it will be a eye opener for you. So the idea here, maybe the most important sentence on this slide, so the introduction is without ISM code flood. Many people think that when we do reverse engineering, people see a lot of assembly, a lot of debugger, disassemblers, a lot of code and so on. But I will show you today that you can do reverse engineering of malware, malicious piece of code, without any assembly and just by using simple tools. About myself, the classic slides. So my name is Xavier, coming from Belgium, where I'm freelance. One of my favorite jobs is to hunt bad guys for my customers and also during my free time because I'm a SANS Internet Storm Center handler. So I hope that you know the Internet Storm Center, the famous diaries and the podcast made by Johannes every morning. I'm also a SANS instructor, so I'm teaching reverse engineering. That's what I'm talking about malware today. I'm also the co-organizer of the Brucon Security Conference in Belgium, and aside this, because I need to decompress from time to time to do something else to get rid of IT, computers, I'm a big fan of mountain biking, so I try to do mountain biking every week. If you want to follow me, I'm pretty active on Twitter, so you follow the yellow blowfish, but the Belgian blowfish like this. I use the same avatar on all the social networks, so Mastodon, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. So, as I said, when we mention reverse engineering, what people think, they think about this. Very nice screenshot of Ghidra, a lot of code, and usually people are a little bit afraid because, whoa, assembly. For example, when I'm teaching for 610, on day 2, the day 2 is fully dedicated to assembly. And people are always scared because, oh, I don't know assembly, I don't like registers and so on, memory addressing, the wonderful stack and so on. So that's the idea that people have about reverse engineering. Reality is this. What people do in many organizations today, they just drop the malware in a sandbox, they cross their fingers, and they hope that they will get some results. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. And of course, when I start to analyze some samples, I do this too. I will not lose my time to start to fire debugger and to do some high-level stuff. If the sandbox does a great job and the malware is detected as a Agent Tesla, Loki, whatever you want, okay, it's case closed. You don't have to go deeper. There are two worlds in reverse engineering, so when people play with malware. The first one is when you do malware reverse engineering, you expect to do this. Some people are lucky because they work for very big vendors. I will not mention names. These vendors, they have one goal. Noise, to generate some noise. So what does it mean? They have a bunch of people. When they found a new sample, they invest a lot of time to analyze the malware. And besides this, they do very important stuff. They find a name, a logo, they register a domain name, and then they produce some papers. They publish the findings. So the goal is to make some noise. I'm also involved with some of my customers. They also do that. So they have teams and they do reverse engineering because they are busy in very sensitive domains, very sensitive activities, and they would like to be sure that when they detect a new malware, we do reverse engineering and we go as deep as possible to understand the magic behind this. But otherwise, probably most of the companies, that's what you do. When you have a new sample, you only have a few hours maximum to analyze it. And if I say a few hours, you are already lucky because most of the time it's only a few. Just straight to the point, what the malware tried to do. Can you extract some IOCs, share the IOCs with other teams? Case closed. So the idea is to identify it. We try to identify it. You will fail. I fail too, most of the time. You share IOCs and then you repeat the job. That's what we do day after day when you have to analyze the malware. Regarding a quick introduction, because a malware, so some people think, yeah, we found a very interesting P file, an executable on a computer, but computers will never be infected magically. You never have a malware dropping magically on the computer. It must be infected. So you have always an infection path. So during a patient 0, there is some mistake in the configuration. There is some open RDP ports, for example. But usually you have SMTP, HTTP, you have a phishing email, some exploit kit, weak credentials that are used, so VPN are accessible, RDP servers and so on. And basically you have always this kind of story. You have a compromised account. For example, they are for sale, so you have a multi-tier approach on the black market. So some people, they sell credentials. Oh, you would like to infect this company? I have credentials for you. It works perfectly because they have a VPN, an RDP, as I said, and so on. These credentials are bought by another group, and this group performs the attack. So they do the remote access, they implement the malware, so there is a backdoor, and they sell the remote access. And of course, they increase the price. And finally, you have a third group. What they do, they bought this remote access and they implement, for example, a ransomware. That's the classic approach that you have to do. So multiple teams, every team does some business, they sell it, they get some money, the price increase and so on and so on, until you have the ransomware, and then the company, the victim, has to pay a lot of money. Regarding the due transport mechanism, because attackers, they always try to renew their TTPs. What does it mean? By you as defenders, you know that you have these techniques, and I like to compare the security like fashion. I was in Milan, so the city of fashion, a few weeks ago, and it's like, I like to say it's like fashion, because in fashion, for example, in 2023, the main color for all clothes will be all people will be dressed in red. The next year it will be blue. The next year it will be green, black. And a few years after, red, blue will be back on stage. It's exactly the same in malware. For example, think about the XL4. So we had a very interesting talk about Excel this morning. It was mentioned the XL4 macros. XL4 macros are used for years. But young people, the newcomers, they know VBA. They don't know XL4 macros. So what happened at a certain point? Attackers start again to push samples using XL4 macros, because defenders, they pay less attention to them. They don't know the technique at all. Oh, what is an XL4? Who knows XL4 macros in the room? Raise your hand. Yeah, that's the proof by the just perfect evidence. So they try to renew their TTPs all the time. And beginning of this year, so it was already in January, but we saw a new type of attack based on Microsoft OneNote files. So Microsoft OneNote is not known by a lot of people, but when you install Microsoft Office, the complete suite, you get Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, but you have a lot of small tools aside these big programs. And one of them is OneNote. OneNote is just a tool to take top notes. The name says everything. And attackers, they found a new way to deploy malicious content, because people, they trust OneNote, they don't know OneNote. And the good point is, OneNote, even if you don't use it, it's installed on your computer. So if you double click on a OneNote file, it will open Microsoft OneNote, and so on and so on. So when it was disclosed in January, what we did at the Internet Storm Center, of course, we tried to investigate this, and I found a very interesting OneNote file. So what I did, of course, fresh meat. So I put my hand on the file, I start to investigate this, and then this talk is a recap. I will show you what I did, because at this time there were no specific tools. I will show you what I did manually to investigate this file. This time, the attackers, they decided to target OneNote files, but the question is, we can already ask ourselves, who's next? Because if you have a look at the Microsoft registry, and you have a look at all the file extensions that are known by Windows, we can guess that in the coming weeks, coming months, they will use another type of file. For example, we got a lot of .iso files, so ISO files. Because when you double click on an ISO file on Windows, it will be mounted, and in this file, in this image, you will get a VBA, a piece of JavaScript, and so on. So what will be the next one? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you, but I'm sure that we will have new attack abusing other extension in the coming months. So, regarding nodes, this is the node that I received. So I found one because I hunt. So one of my favorite playgrounds is Virus Total. And I found, so one of my Yara rules reported this, and I found this wonderful OneNote file. So when you open it, so I did it in a sandbox. I had OneNote installed, and you have a blank document with only one button, click to view the document. guess what? People, they click. Problem exists between the keyboard and the share. You know it works. So they click, and that will trigger a malicious script that will do something else, something else, something else, and I will show you different steps and at the end what happened. So of course, this file, I presume, I don't know, I don't have the complete context. I presume it was part of a phishing attempt. It's always like this. You get a nice email and the attacker asks you to, open this wonderful document. There are interesting information. Open it. You will see it will be very famous, funny. Guess what? I don't know, but it's part of a phishing attack. I don't have the context in this time. I just had the file. So probably the phishing attempt say click on the blue button and you will have some magic. So that's what I did, because if you ask me to do something, I will do it. So I opened the file, I had a look, and the first thing that was really funny is that if you move the blue button, it's just an icon, you have below 3 small icons. So basically the 3 scripts were hidden behind the blue button. So just drag and drop and you will see this. Of course, never do this on a corporate computer. It has been done in a sandbox, in a safe environment, in my lab and so on. And what you have is, besides this, you have some interesting links, like, because everything is a URI on Windows, and instead of HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, and so on, you can have one node, colon, // The path that you see here is my malware zoo at home, so it's not the normal one, because it has been updated when I opened the document. And what you have here is an HTA file. So HTA file, so it's an HTML application. It's a file which is interpreted by Microsoft Windows on all your Windows computers. If you double click on an HTA file, it will try to open the file, and most of them does not contain only HTML, but also contain scripts. And these scripts will do something interesting. Let's have a look at this. The first thing, when I started to investigate this, I said, but there is something strange. Have a look at my screen. The file was called temp eno.hta. So this is on a Linux system. And the result was, so I did a file temp eno.hta, and I got this. Temps enil flcrht text blah blah blah. You see, everything is reversed. So basically, you see the question mark in the file. It's a specific Unicode character 202E, which means right to left override. So it inverted the strings. So basically, on Linux, when you have this, well, good luck. Probably, I don't know why, it's a guess, but probably it has been done by the attacker to defeat stupid security controls. If you have regular expressions, Yara rules, stuff like this, you try to verify, to extract all the attachments, and you try to see the file. It's a stupid trick, but it works to make the life of the reverse engineer more difficult, or to bypass stupid security control. So that's the first trick. There was a specific Unicode character inside the file name. Of course, when I did this, there was no tool available. So I had to open the file by the OneNote file by myself. So once again, don't do this on a corporate computer. But probably you know Didier Stevens, famous name in the security landscape. So Didier is a big friend of mine. I know him for years. He's also based in Belgium. He's also a Soundsit and a Storm Center handler. And Didier has a philosophy. This guy is crazy. If he does not find the right tool, he will write the tool himself. So basically what he did, and it was released a few days after I did this manually, he just contacted me and said, oh, Xavier, by the way, I created onedump.py. Probably you know zip dump, XML dump, OLA dump, all the wonderful tools that Didier wrote, and he wrote onedump.py. So what I did manually, now you can do this automatically using Didier's tool. Onedump.py, you specify the name and it will tell you, so it's always the same philosophy in Didier's tool. You will get the PNG files and so on, and here you see the first byte starting from the string number 2, which are the bracket exclamation point, so that's my HTA file. Honestly, I don't know if the file has been released. I have a copy because, yeah, Didier shared a lot of stuff with me. But when I wrote the slides, I wrote them a few weeks ago. I think that the tool was not yet public, but I'm sure it will become available for everybody soon. Of course, this HTA contains a VBA macro, and that's the magic of Microsoft, because it's an HTA file, but Microsoft has a lot of scripting capabilities. You can have HTA, JavaScript, VBA, VBS, and so on. And this HTA file contains a wonderful VBA macro. If you know VBA macro, you can read it by yourself. It's pretty easy to understand. What it does, it executes two commands, two PowerShells. This PowerShell will download two URLs. So the first one you download from www.onenote.egm.com, upload, blah, blah. So another OneNote file. And the second PowerShell will download a window.bat, and then it will execute it. What's the magic behind this? The first PowerShell, which is just a decoy, it will download a new OneNote file and it will open it. And this one is absolutely not malicious. It's a simple agenda like this. But the idea is to make the user confident that, yeah, okay, I click on the blue button and I know I got a new note, which is my daily schedule, empty. So what? Yeah. But the second PowerShell, it downloaded a bat file. So let's have a look at the bat file. The bat file was really nice because the obfuscation was not complicated. You will see, very easy to understand. But I like it because it shows you the power of the bat file. A lot of people, they think that, yes, a Microsoft, so the cmd.exe or a bat file is a dumb command interpreter. It's a dumb shell. When you compare a bash, a ZSH, to a cmd.exe, you think, yeah, it's cmd.exe exists for 20, 30 years, maybe. I don't know, a lot of time. But you can perform crazy stuff with, in a bat file. For example, you can create a lot of environment variable. And that's what you have. You have the set gpzp equals set. So what does it mean? Instead of having set something when you define a new environment, you will obfuscate all the rest of the code. So what does it mean? We will set, you see gp.zp will be replaced here. And for every line, we will create environment variables that contains every time 2 letters. And of course, what we have then, we have here a concatenation of all the environment variables created, and we will reconstruct the code that will be executed. So it's not very complicated, but if you read this, your human eye, you will cry because, whoa, I don't understand anything. What's the magic behind this? Well, if you practice reverse engineering and you have a look at such kind of script, it's very piece of cake to understand. But when you open this for the first time, whoa, I'm lost. What happened? So we have a concatenation of commands, and when you deobfuscate this, that's the wonderful code that you get. So you have another bunch of PowerShell code, and you see here another trick. Also, this OneNote is honestly stupid because there is not a lot of magic and so on. But the idea is it's interesting how the attacker tries to defeat the classic security tools. For example, probably a lot of you know Sysmon, so you can detect when you have an Excel sheet, an Excel process starting a macro and you have a PowerShell, the parent process is Word or Excel, it's definitely suspicious. So the trick here, the attacker, he copied PowerShell.exe to window.bat.exe. So, and basically, then he called the window.bat.exe with the PowerShell script. So if you list the processes on the system, you will not see PowerShell.exe, but you will see window.bat.exe, something like this, which looks less suspicious. What we can see in this kind of PowerShell script, it's also a very common PowerShell script. I will show you some interesting information. First, suspicious strings have been reversed. You see that you have here a classic one, read all text, which has been reversed. You have here from base 64 string, from base 64 string. So it's a classic technique to make your life more difficult and defeat Yara rules, regular expressions, so the classic stupid security control that you can implement. That's the first thing. What we have also, we see that we have encryption in place because we have system.security.cryptography.ias manager. And you see below that you have cipher mode, CBC, PKCS 7, and so on and so on. And you have here the wonderful key, another, a bunch of base64. So probably the AV and the key have been also base64 encoded. So we have encryption, we have the PowerShell that has been renamed, we have the reverse of interesting strings. What we have also, yes, an extra bonus, the payload is compressed. Yeah, if you can reduce the size of your payload and you can also obfuscate it a bit better, why not? But where is this payload? So if you read this PowerShell, what we have? So we have So this is a new bat file which replaces PowerShell.exe with window.bat.exe. Then we spawn a PowerShell and we have some code. We see that we extract a payload from somewhere. The payload has been encrypted. It has been zipped. And we have the classic reflection assembly, data, join, blah, blah, blah. And we have the wonderful entry point, blah, blah, invoke. So if you read this, probably the next payload will be the shellcode or will be the executable that will do the magic. But where is it? That's the question. Let's continue then. So we have here another payload that is loaded. Where is the payload? Anybody has an idea? If you read this, just read the very first line of the script, and if you have an idea where the payload could be stored, raise your hand. Just take 15, 20 seconds. Anybody? So, yeah.
Could be wrong, but it says system of reflection and assembly. So it's probably downloading it from somewhere.
No. It's no.
Memory?
No.
It's in the registry.
No. It's in the file itself. Because you have this. So what we do, this wonderful, remember that we have here, read all text. So what's it mean? We downloaded, so I will explain carefully. We downloaded window.bat. You remember this? When we executed the HTA, we downloaded a OneNote file and a window.bat. The window.bat, what we do, we read all the text inside a variable, and then what we do, for each line of this file, we search for if the line starts with : : space. If the line starts with : space, we read the line, we remove the : space, and we add it to this variable. So basically, the payload is encoded in the string. And that's what you have. You have the : space, and all the rest, this is a very long line which contains the payload. So the payload is inside the file. It's also a classic trick. Very, very easy. And this file, of course, I know it, but it's a P file. And the P file then will be loaded and will be executed. So have a look, we are already at stage 5. So you see that you have a lot of script calling another script, the obfuscation, and so on and so on. And what I did right now, I just use this, I did this using the text editor. I loaded the file in my text editor and tried to do some, I review the code and to do the reverse engineering stuff. Once you have this, CyberChef to the rescue. Probably a lot of you know CyberChef. I really like the tool. I use it daily. Really, really powerful. And why we have to use CyberChef? Because the payload that we have in the file has been compressed and encrypted. Remember this? It was in the PowerShell script. So what we have to do, well, we have just to write a simple recipe in CyberChef. The first one is we decode the base64. Then we decrypt it with the key and the IV that we have in the script. So I will go back. So that's the information that we have here. Oops, sorry. Where is it? Here. My key and the IV. I even don't have to decode them because CyberChef will do the job automatically. You can specify that the data that you pass in base is in base64. And then you have to unzip, because you have also compression, and you find the wonderful MZ, the MZ header. So we have a brand new executable file. Yeah. What do we do from now? No, you can fire your debugger, you can fire your disassembler if you want, but I will not go so deep because that my goal was to show you how to access interesting information. Just to give you an idea, the PE file is still unknown on VT. And you can see I checked yesterday. So yesterday I did another check. I searched for this SHA-256 on VT. It's unknown. But the file is not very malicious. Well, very malicious. It's not a very, very nasty malware. First, it's a .NET binary. And when you have to address a .NET binary, don't load it in the disassembler, in a debugger and so on, because it's a mess to debug. There is a very nice tool that you can use for this purpose is dnspy. dnspy is really great because it will disassemble .NET executable and you will find everything. Really a great tool. So what I did, I just loaded my dnspy and I did my job as usual. I searched for interesting strings and I found, for example, once again, everything is encrypted. So all the interesting strings in this binary have been encrypted using AES. You have an example here. You have a call to this wonderful, very nice function, .load library. So what we do, we load the library ntdll.dll, then we get proc address, and this is encoded. So basically, how to translate this in English, in words, we try to get the address of a specific API call, but this API call has been encrypted using AES, so we will not disclose the capabilities of the malware. When you analyze a malware, the first thing that you can try to do is to have a look at the API calls used by the malware, because it will give you a very nice hint. If you see that you have Open Internet A, you know that the malware will try to connect somewhere on a server, stuff like that. So by obfuscating all the interesting API calls, we have a nice obfuscation technique. And why this technique of load library and get proc address is used? Because it's a way to reduce the imports table. You know that, or if you don't know, in a PE file, you have what we call the EAT, the imports table, which lists the API calls used by the malware. Because this EAT is built when you link the program. Of course, if you have a look at this EAT using static analysis tool, without running the malware, you can spot interesting activities. It will read this file, it will try to read some stuff from the registry, it will do encryption, connect to the internet. So what do the attackers? They reduce the size of this EAT by using this technique, the get proc address and load library, and the EAT will be smaller, so you will not guess easily what the malware tries to do. And every time you have this wonderful TDB blah 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 function call, you have it here. Where is it? TDB here, for example. It's a function that will do the AES decryption of all the interesting strings. So, what's about this malware? Well, as I said, it's not very, very dangerous. It's just a new RAT, remote access tool, from the async family. And just for your information, that's the address of the C2 server. So once the malware is running, it will try to contact this wonderful ddns.net host name. And basically, it's a remote access tool, so it means that you have one step inside the victim's computer, keylogger, taking screenshots, and so on and so on. Thank you. So as I said, no assembly, nothing, just simple tools. Any question? Yes.
What do you do for your environment and doing your forensics? Do you use a container, or don't you do that just directly onto your laptop?
No, I have VMs, virtual machines. So basically, I have two virtual machines, a Windows one, because, for example, dnspy is a tool that runs on Windows. When you need to investigate a OneNote file, it's better to do it on a Windows environment. And aside, I have a Remnux distribution. So Remnux is a Linux distribution, but oriented to fully reverse engineering malware. And basically, the two are interconnected. So when my Windows needs to access some DNS resources, internet and so on, it sends everything to my Remnux, and my Remnux acts as a proxy. I can do full packet capture, man in the middle, and it talks to the wild internet, if I can say. So I'm using virtual machines, basically, yeah. Yes?
How commonly you see DLL side loading technique being used nowadays? So
not every day, but it's a very common technique. So it's classic technique, yes. but I don't see this every day. You have to know that in many malware remains very basic, and they do always the same techniques and so on. So if you don't work in a very sensitive environment when you could be targeted by a very nasty attackers group, most of the time it's really, really easy. What you see today is a lot of .NET binaries, for example. It's pretty common. But you can see the DLL side loading. So I will not discuss about this because it's another topic. It's not here. But yeah, I see them from time to time. Yes. I saw another. Yes.
You mentioned when it makes it C2 convention, it's all encrypted in AES. I'm going to guess you were unable to use the AES key they found in the code.
I did not try to go so deep because for me as I said, you have two types of reverse engineers. You have the guy doing the reversing from A to Z because I have to produce a paper with a nice logo, a nice domain name, and so on. But if you do reverse engineering in a normal company, your goal is to get your hands on this because you identify the malware. If you can get interesting IOCs, you know how to clean computers, and you can also communicate. For example, if I have this wonderful host name, what I do, I call the guy responsible from the DNS, and I say, guys, can you tell me how many computers resolved this host name? And based on this, you know if you have one computer infected in the company or if you have 5,000, for example. And then you can, if you block this using DNS firewall, you don't clean, the computer remains infected, but at least you cut the communication with the C2 server and you are safer between codes. No more question? Yes.
Okay. How did you manage to attribute that it was asynchronous?
Because for two reasons. First, I found interesting piece of code in the spy because you can see, as I said, malware families or malware developers, it's like a developer. They don't reinvent the wheel. So they share code, they share functions and so on. So basically, if you have a look at different malware, just by having a look at the code, if they use the code in this way or you have this function, you can put a name on the malware. The wormxwo.dns.net, I found it using two ways. So first, I found it easily because that's what I said. That's maybe the most interesting slide. This one. Because what I did, I also ran the malware in my sandbox and I saw that it was communicating to this hostname the easy way, stupid way, but if it works. And also then when I analyzed the code in DNSpy, I found it also in DNSpy, of course. Yeah. But if this works, I will not lose my time. Yeah. Another one? Otherwise, we wrap up? Oh, okay. Thank you very much once again.